Welcome to the Healers Café, the number one show for medical practitioners and holistic healers to have heart to heart conversations about their day to day lives while sharing their expertise for improving your health and wellness. Welcome to the Healers Cafe. And today I have with me Christine Trimpe, and she's a transformative wellness leader dedicated to empowering professional women to reclaim their health and vitality through her faith-based holistic approach to weight loss. She's also the founder of the Sugar-Freed Me method and a certified sugar license practitioner. So I think I'm gonna leave it at that. Let's talk. Let's talk about that, and maybe to contextualize it. How did you get? Because I read your whole story,
Yeah.
but what happened? How did you get into it? How did you know it was addictive behavior? How did all of that? Why don't we go there?
Yeah, well, let's start like 10 years ago this year. In 2015, my husband and I went on an anniversary trip to the Rocky Mountain National Park, and he made some plans to climb up some hikes, and we wanted to go to Nymph Lake at the Bear Lake stop. And I went to the trail marker and I saw that Nymph Lake was a half a mile away, and I thought, oh, I could do that. But I started climbing up that trail and I got about halfway up and I realized I couldn't do it. My body was saying no, absolutely not. I was gasping in air and I had to sit down on the side of that path, told my husband to go ahead, go on without me. And the reason I had to sit down is because at that time I was morbidly obese, carrying more than 100 pounds of excess weight. And I just couldn't go on. So I had that moment in my life. I would never have told you I was a sugar addict or a food addict. I just felt like I was chronically dealing with this yo-yo dieting, which I had done for 30 years. But in that moment sitting on the side of the path, I feel like that was my turning point moment. I call it like my take ownership moment, my no plan B, because I was really determined to go home from that trip not to miss out on another hike with my husband or not to miss out on activities with my family. So that was 10 years ago was the starting point to this, what I call now my quitting sugar journey. But that was something had to change. And I came home from that trip and was ready to take this journey. And, I'm so grateful that my journey was step by step. And we could talk like about how the steps went, but that definitely was the point of where my transformation began.
Mm. And do you find that true for most of your clients now that there's a pivotal point where they make a bigger decision, like a value-driven life decision, and then
Yes,
yeah,
yeah, absolutely. And of course, I'm so privileged to be able to coach the women that come to me. I coach my old self. I attract the women that find themselves in the same type of situation in life. Like I was a professional woman. I had a career in accountancy for 32 years. I was a controller in a medium-sized corporation. And I never felt like a professional person because I just couldn't get my health right. I just could not do this thing right. I would, yo-yo diet. I would lose a little, gain a lot, lose a little, gain a lot. But now looking back and knowing all of that, and meeting women where they are in the same place, it's like I didn't know what I didn't know. And
right.
then coming home and exploring this whole new world of metabolic health that no doctor, no nutritionist, no registered dietitian had ever shared with me before. So when women hear my story, we connect because they're like, oh, no one's ever said that to me before. So yeah, we attract each other because they also too think about their future and they're about the same age as I am and they think about I want to play with my grandchildren. I want to meet my grandchildren, and so we're all at that stage of life. And so yes, they do all come to some type of I can't continue doing this any longer moment.
But it's not necessarily with the knowledge that it's the sugar the cause, right? It's the
Hey,
generally the weight, correct?
Exactly. I Women come to me because they want to lose weight and they've seen maybe a transformation side by side photo or they've read my story in the magazine. And then what they don't realize is that yeah, they want to lose the weight and that's a great thing to get healthy. But what they don't realize is how highly addictive sugar and refined carbohydrates and, food that is high in sugar, it's addictive and they don't realize that.
Mhm. So what are we including in sugar? What
Oh,
kind of,
sugar.
yeah.
Yes. When I say sugar, it's not just the sweet stuff. So when I started my quitting sugar journey, I did give up the sweet stuff, like the white sugars, the cookies, the cakes, birthday cakes at the office, candy, things like that. But it also includes starchy vegetables and the factory foods. Like if you look at food ingredient labels, you'll see that there's sugar in almost
Yep.
everything in the grocery store, right? And when you go up and down the aisles. So I'm talking about sugar, grains, starchy vegetables. Those are things that are, if you give the carb count on them, anything like a high carb count, oatmeal. Oatmeal is loaded with sugar. Heart healthy Cheerios is loaded with sugar. Things
And
like,
for
yes, yes. So
glycosates and
yeah. So, and then my biggest thing that I really loved to snack on when I was snacking on foods high in sugar are potato chips. Like salty, crunchy potato chips are pure sugar when it hits your body to digest.
right, right.
Hmm.
And do you find that often it's like that? It's a food or a taste, because you think sugar, but yours was salty potato chips, right?
Right, right.
How would you describe like the scope of this sort of addictive desire? What's behind that?
Yeah, I think definitely the food that like potato chips that's made in a factory, I really believe that they're made to be hyper palatable, meaning the food manufacturers want us to keep coming back for more. And so those potato chips, like the Ruffles with ridges that were salty, that I could not just eat one. If you start, I'm just going to have a handful of potato chips. And then before long, you realize you're like, oh my goodness, I need to close up this bag because I just ate half a bag of potato chips without even thinking.
Right.
So those foods are hyper palatable. They keep us coming back for more. And I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but I know that it might be profit driven to create foods, the salt, the fats, the sugars. And then our brain gets used to that dopamine hit and it wants that reward, especially when we're I often would cope with food when I was, emotionally dysregulated. And that doesn't mean just being sad or depressed, like even being in times of celebration. You're like, oh, I was driven to eat more foods that was not serving my health at all.
And what's your approach? I mean, there's different approaches, obviously, with or different methodologies to help people.
Mhm.
What is unique or different about the way you approach it? And maybe if you could explain a little bit, how do you approach this?
Yeah. So I actually wrote all about my method, which is called the Sugar Free Me Method, in my book Sugar Freed, same name, and my coaching programs are all named Sugar Freed as well. So I came up, just looked back in hindsight. Look, what happened for me was when I began quitting sugar, I realized what sugar was doing to my health. I realized how it was damaging my metabolism, and I realized how I'd been stuck in that cycle because my blood sugars were unbalanced. My insulin hormone was no doubt out of whack. So in hindsight, I looked and I saw that, first of all, for me, this was a very faith-based journey. Finally, for once in my life, being someone that grew up in the faith, grew up in my church, I never thought to incorporate my spiritual side in this journey. I just felt like I could control the physical aspect of it by counting calories and doing the graphs and the charts and weighing myself. But so first and foremost, I have five pillars, and the first foundational pillar is my faith. And then my other pillars are food, choosing whole nutritious foods to fuel our body well. And then fasting, not being afraid of fasting, learning how to, that also, it really grows the characteristic of self-control, which is very helpful when you're trying to get healthy. And then feelings, that's another part of the journey that I missed out on my 30 years of dieting. But yeah, I learned and I coach my clients through the emotional health aspect is really important. And then fitness. I'm not a gym nut. I'm not a fitness trainer, but I really discovered that once I got to a healthier weight, I wanted to move my body and it just felt so good to move my body. And I also talk and coach my clients that fitness is important for not just our body, but for our mind and for our spiritual health as well too. So those are the 5 pillars of the sugar-freed me method.
So can we go a little bit into the faith aspect of it? Could you expand, well, what it meant for you and
Mhm.
how it might relate to other people? What does that mean exactly?
Yeah, so for me, I never really thought that God cared about the way I cared about my health. I felt like he was just like too busy to be concerned about that. And I was really good about hiding my food behaviors, which in hindsight now I talk a lot about how I used to do a lot of secret eating or I would, hit the drive-through and in secret, and the only person I was fooling was myself.
Right.
Because as a person of faith, I know that, God sees everything. But when I finally started on this sugar-free journey, I started waking up first thing in the morning really refreshed. And for the first time in my life, I started picking up my Bible every single day. And I'd never done that in before in all my years. I was almost 50 years old at that time. So I started reading scripture and I started learning that God does care about how I care about my health. And He called me to care about my health as a temple, this one body, this one life that He's given me. And now I'm so excited. I just love sharing about how through this journey, this faith-based journey, like joy has grown in my heart. And when you have joy increasing in your heart, you can't keep it quiet. And so that's why I show up and I have to share with women. Like there is so much more to life. I was living, I would say I used to wear a lot of masks quite well. Like I would have the appearance that I was a happy person, but really deep down, I was really full of sorrow because of my circumstances. Not only just my health circumstances, but it also, it made me emotionally depressed and feeling anxious and feeling like a failure and all those things. So incorporating and using scripture to help me through this journey really has built that solid foundation. And that really is the weight loss was wonderful, but growing spiritually and having this greater joy and freedom in living is really where the victory is.
What would your life be like if you were pain-free? If you were one of the millions who suffer from chronic pain, the thought of just one day without it may seem impossible. This is often because conventional medicine tends to fall short in the treatment of pain, opting to prescribe pills or recommend surgery rather than getting to the root cause of the problem. But if you are suffering with emotional or physical pain, there is hope. Join the founder and CEO of Bowen College, Manon Bolliger, live online for your body-mind reboot. Learn how to listen to your symptoms and get to the root cause of your pain. Plus, be trained in basic Bowen therapy moves so that you can reboot your body for optimal health. You don't have to live in pain. You can heal. Stop the pain pill cycle by visiting www.yourbodymindreboot.com to learn more and to register.
Mhm, mhm. Yeah, no, it's interesting because I've seen many times in health having a spiritual component
Mhm.
to the journey is kind of what the journey is about,
Yes.
and it doesn't need to be religious per se. I think for some people that's not how they find it. It sounds like for you, you were exposed to a platform that was already established, but I don't know, can you comment on that? Like,
Mm.
do you think, um, how much did your past help you? And or can a person in your mind, have a spiritual
Mhm.
experience, a spiritual journey without necessarily having any real exposure to that, like, and yet, do your program and lose the weight?
Yeah.
And I don't know if my question's
Yeah.
clear, but
Okay, let me see if I can answer this for you. So I do feel like I was very blessed that I was raised in the Christian faith. So I had that heritage of faith.
right.
But it was very, I always say it was my casual Christian years. I was very casual about my religious, you would call it my religious experience. I would go to church off and on, and I did it to make sure my parents or my grandparents weren't disappointed that I didn't take my kids to church. So that was my foundation, but I'm very blessed that I did have that. But what I discovered in this, realizing that God does care about how we care about our bodies, I 100% believe that God created us, man, woman, uniquely in body, mind, and spirit. Like we are
Mhm.
not just a physical body. We have thoughts, we have emotions, we have ways to move forward. We have ways to connect with the Lord. We could read His Word, and we can have an understanding of what He is calling us to do individually. For our health. Some of us are in different places, but yeah, I just seeing and understanding like um there is more to life. I mean, again, it's just like this greater freedom and this greater joy that I had never experienced before. And I hope everybody finds that. Like there is so much more to life than being stuck in a rut or being stuck in your circumstances.
Yeah, no, I think the idea, what resonates with me is
Mhm.
is the idea that there's more. We are
Mhm.
bigger than our physical 3D dimension,
Mhm.
and often what initiates change and desire to move forward is that inner knowing that
Mhm.
there's something more, right? And that always calls in values, right?
Yes.
Do you value, your body, whether you call it a temple or not?
Mhm.
Or,
Mhm.
or do you value life?
Mhm.
Do you value your family? Like, I think those are core, fundamental beliefs, that if you're really unattached to all of that, why would you care? And why would you change? So I think it's yeah, I think there's something definitely around that I have seen in
Yeah.
my practice as well when people are, committed to making big changes.
Right. And I feel like when you feel stuck in your circumstances, like when I was morbidly obese, I hated that terminology. I hated like walking into the doctor's office and them saying, "You're morbidly obese." I'm like, "Tell me something I don't know, doctor." Okay. So you just have this like I describe it as just carrying this extra weight on me that I didn't need. I had the 100 pounds of weight on my body, but I also had like 1,000 pounds of distress and despair and disappointment and frustration and all the things that just really weigh down on your heart. But when like in that turning point moment that I had, just knowing and thinking and praying like there had to be more to life. Like I'm capable of doing this. If I can have a successful career, there's got to be a way to get out of this circumstance too.
And what do you find from your experience, I mean, whether in personal or through your work, that is the hardest for people in this journey? What's the sticking points?
Yeah, it's getting them to move from this contemplation point. Like I'm contemplating improving my health.
Right.
And what is I have found with so many women who have been in my world for years now that they have been contemplating this and for some reason they just get stuck and they get hung up there and they just can't step out in faith and just take that next step. So that's a really hard, difficult place to overcome. I'm not, maybe you've experienced that too in your practice. Like people want to get healthy and you give them the tools and the resources and the advice and and you just watch them spin their wheels.
Yeah, but often in those cases, there's an emotional attachment
Mm-hmm.
to what permits what's going on,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
And I've seen that with, even very serious chronic diseases
Mhm.
where, in I think it was my first book or second book I wrote about, it really hit me, this woman who had MS who uh, got out of her wheelchair, was dancing, was like, her life was back,
Yes.
but she lost her husband's constant care of her.
Mm.
And she couldn't live with that.
Mm.
It's interesting. She felt like he was, he was wheeling her. She had attention and obviously she would have attention in different ways in her new state, but she wasn't ready to stay in that state. And then she
Yeah.
refused to continue treatment because she was
Oh.
afraid then she would lose him. It's very interesting, right?
Oh, that is very complicated. Yeah, emotional.
And that was
Right.
20,
Yeah.
25
Mhm.
years ago. I
Yeah.
think knowing what I know now, I think I probably would have found ways around this state.
Mhm. Yeah.
That at the time, it was like, okay, it's not her time. This is not the journey. And, I
Yeah.
honored that this is her process. I did try and convince her, of course, a
Right.
little
Right.
bit, but
Right.
then, it's like, okay,
Yeah. Yeah.
people choose.
Right. And the one thing for me as a coach too, coaches move people forward. I'm a health and wellness coach as well. So coaches move women forward. And once we show up and we start like getting the food right and we're releasing the sugar cravings, we're overcoming the sugar addiction, we're not relying on junk food so much, then that's when I might encourage them if a lot of emotional stuff is coming up, if they're like realizing what the trauma was in their life that may have put them in this
Right.
circumstance. Then that's when I would recommend like go work with a professional about the past. But first, it's great for them to get in that place where they're eating healthy and they're feeling
Right.
better because then they've got this they're grounded in this and as they work through the emotions of trauma because they're grounded in their nutrition and their food and what they're doing and it's making them feel so much better too, they've got that to fall back on as they start digging up all the emotions of it. Yes.
Mhm. Yeah, no, that makes sense. And what about like nutritional deficiencies from eating or giving most of your calories to foods that are worthless? um,
Yeah.
have you found that of course when they eat real foods and cook,
Hmm.
or have raw salads and whatever else the right amount of protein. I'm not sure what your recommended diet is, but I mean it makes sense, it changes the physiology. But have you noticed that often there's deficiencies nutritionally, that common ones that you see?
Oh, yeah. Well, first of all, I think most Americans are deficient in magnesium.
Yes.
We start to, that's one of the things I talk about first with my coaching clients. And then I do recommend because most of the women are my age, like perimenopausal, postmenopausal, recommend trying to focus on getting 30% of their nutrition intake from protein daily, and then while keeping their sugar and carbs low. But yeah, and if they do have like if they come to a place where they're not losing weight and it doesn't make sense, like they've got their nutrition right, then I might recommend they work with like a naturopath or a functional medicine doctor to figure out like if something's going on with their gut health, get some blood work done. What is your fasting insulin? Let's check that out and see if that is improving, if it's lowering to a normal range. So yeah, after 30 years of eating the way I ate personally, my body was very nutritionally deficient. I had a lot of things that I needed to heal.
Yeah. Mhm. And we're in a difficult time because a lot of our food is literally poisoned. I
Yeah.
mean, they use, so many chemicals,
Hmm.
unless you can do organic, but even that, with all the
Right.
spraying in the skies, it's very
Right.
hard to get clean food, so we're up definitely against a challenge, but a good
Yeah,
one in the sense that the more people who become aware of this, then we have multifaceted ways of getting on track, so
right. Yes, exactly. It is hard to trust the food environment, but when I can, when it's in the budget, I do like to buy from like my local farms and
yeah,
ranches.
yeah.
Yeah, so and at the farmers market and just trusting and hoping that they say it's organic and pesticide free, then just trusting that it really is. So you're right,
Yeah,
it's difficult to navigate.
it is. Yeah. So, well, we're actually at our time. Do you have something that you could guide people to either a book you've written or, what are the next steps if they're resonating with this and they'd like to work with you?
Yeah, I would love to invite them to check out my book, Sugar Freed. The tagline is Stop Losing the Weight Loss Battle, Start Gaining the Victory. And I have a link for them that they can actually get a chapter excerpt free as a free gift. So if they download that, they'll get more information about the book. And then they can find me on my website, just my name, ChristineTrimpe.com. I have all kinds of resources on there. They can connect with me. And I'm on social media everywhere.
All right. Well, thank you very much for sharing your time and your knowledge. And yeah, I appreciate our discussion.
Okay. Thank you, Manon. It's been nice.
So, as we saw with the interview with Christine Trimpe, uh, she uses a faith-based method in addition to the common sense removal of sugar in her methodology. What I wanted to point out as well, at Bowen College, where we train people in Bowen therapy, we use also a physical-based therapy. So the question would be, if a person who has sugar cravings is also disconnected from their body, Bowen therapy would be a wonderful addition. One, because it helps the body detox, it increases circulation, it works on the lymphatics, and it'll help flush all the excess. So, and it's also good for emotional release. So, in addition to this work, if a person had a body-based therapy like Bowen therapy, um, I'd be very curious to see the results of this. So thank you for joining us and see you next time. Thank you for joining us at the Healers Café. If you haven't already done so, please like, comment, and subscribe with notifications on, as I post a new podcast every Wednesday with tons of useful information and tips for natural healing that you won't want to miss.